Today, we're going to be talking about a really cool way of using TikTok to help people get more involved in church. So, joining me today is Attila Niadi. He is in Budapest, Hungary, and thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
And so, first off, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so as you said, I'm based here in Hungary. I was born here, keep living here. Love this part of the world. I work as a chief of staff for the Lausanne movement, and I also am a pastor locally here for a church that we planted 8 years ago. So kind of like those are the two main roles of my life. Married, two kids. Is that a good summary?
Yeah, that's a great summary, very concise. So, you mentioned the Lausanne movement. For people who don't know what that is, can you explain what that is?
So the Lausanne movement was really started in 1974 by Billy Graham and John Stott. They were the two main figures because what they found is, especially as Billy Graham was traveling the world, that they knew so many key leaders, influencers, Christian leaders who didn't know each other. So they really came up with an idea of a congress where they would bring together all these friends for a global mission. And I don't think the idea was that it would go on for more than 40 years, but it is.
Hmm.
And still, the Lausanne movement is accelerating global mission today through many, many different ways. So it's really a network of networks, a platform for global mission. And we hope to see the Great Commission completed.
It's really exciting seeing what's going on with Lausanne, just from a little bit I see from some of your colleagues.
Right.
And speaking of people gathering together, have you been following what's happened in the US at Asbury College?
Yeah. And, it's interesting that you make that connection with the gathering of people, because when we do gatherings in Lausanne movement, of course, it takes years of preparation, right?
Yeah.
Takes a huge amount of work to make it representative, make it global, make sure it's the right people in the room. And Asbury is kind of like the opposite. It's just
Right.
got showing up and doing something, and it's beautiful. Yeah, I was all over the news when this was happening. And watching how people are shaping their opinions about it. I myself started to watch if there's a live stream, and then there were
Yeah.
different people with very low quality live streams, but I still wanted to keep an eye on it. And it's beautiful. I think it's beautiful what's happened there and what keeps going on right now, even as we speak.
For anyone who doesn't really know what we're talking about, just a little bit of context. So, Asbury College is a small Christian college in the United States in Kentucky, and it's really small. There's like 1,500 students, and the town it's in only has like 6,000 people. So, it's a really small town. And then one time they were having a regular church service in their chapel, and then just some students stayed behind and they just kept praying, and then it kind of caught on, and I'm not sure exactly how like it first grew, but like people on campus heard about it, so they came and joined, and then more word spread, more people kept joining, social media put it out there, and then people like Attila over in Budapest heard about it. I saw an interview with someone all the way from Australia that traveled 10,000 miles to go to this. And then they ended up having, it said in the reports I read, like tens of thousands of people coming to this town of only 6,000 people. So it was completely overwhelmed with like people coming here to be a part of what's being called a revival, that God is just stirring these people to come together and pray and worship. And so
Mhm.
it's really amazing what's going on there. And social media, obviously the Holy Spirit, first and foremost, is what caused that to happen. Social media also played a role in that. And I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about what you saw from the social media side.
Yeah. So first of all, like taking a step back, even looking at the early news, the news came that something is happening in Asbury, and I think everybody was trying to figure out what's going on, and I think social media really became the primary source of information for quite a few
Hmm.
hours or days. I don't know if you've seen this, but I think that the page that the seminary itself put up was a few days later, and they actually didn't call it a revival, which is interesting.
Right.
They called it an outpouring because that's what people experience, right? It's an outpouring of God's love and presence. It was kind of like a quiet revival compared to some previous stories, but yeah, people were posting about it, and it's beautiful. And as I was preparing for this, I was even thinking like how much of it, I think at the height of it, there was like 70,000 people in town.
Wow.
Like imagine like the pressure on the infrastructure
Oh
and
yeah,
like on the leaders and the town itself. I mean, it's crazy. And how much is it Holy Spirit or social media? It might not even be maybe the like I think God can use anything, and He can certainly use social media.
for
So
sure.
probably this happening in this time and age is really strategic. Um, a friend of mine said that whenever, and she has been thinking about and praying for revival for years and years, and
Mm.
she said that if revival breaks anywhere in the world in these days because of social media, it just cannot stay put. It has to spread, and I think that's what we've been witnessing.
Yeah, for sure. And it's spread to other colleges since then. And we're probably not done seeing the spread from that. So that's
Mhm.
really exciting.
I really
Um,
pray. I hope.
yeah, for sure. So switching gears a little bit,
Mhm.
back to you. You have these two big roles that sound like they would use a lot of a person's time. You're a pastor of a church and you're chief of staff with Lausanne. So, what's like a typical day for you or a typical week?
Yeah. So actually, for a long time, I tried to pick from the two.
Mhm.
How I'm wired, I really had a global heart and was really interested in missions and wanting to get involved. So that's where my involvement with the Lausanne movement comes from.
Okay.
But I also went through a personal transformation story um, where it became really important for me that I could minister to people locally and share the good news, the real good news of Jesus Christ with
Mhm.
them, the gospel of grace that sets people free. I've seen so much, legalistic religion that my heart was really to bring people into Scripture so that they can discover like the real good news of Jesus. And so that's how these dual roles emerged, really.
Mhm.
And if you think about my week now, I mean, that's what really marks it. The constant context switching. I think Cal Newport in one of his newer books talks about context switching, and that's what I try to do. And basically, a week looks like usually afternoons are reserved for Lausanne work because most of my American colleagues and other colleagues in the West are, of course, a few hours ahead of behind me, right? So
Right.
working with them in my afternoon makes a lot of sense. And then I try to do most of my church work and content preparation and all of that in the morning time. So that goes on from Monday to Friday, and then Saturday I really try to be focused with the family, and then Sunday is church day, and then after like church, it's like I'm done. so so that's how a typical week looks like, and there's no perfect week.
Yeah.
Like whenever there's travel or something comes up in church, then the balance just it just gets out of balance and out of
Mhm.
hand sometimes.
Sound like a very busy person, but it sounds like you're doing amazing things. So God bless you and everything you're doing.
Thank
Um,
you.
so I'm wondering when you talk about your church and you talked a little bit about legalism versus the real good news. Can you give some context for in Hungary? What's the
Yeah.
situation like? How do people view the church?
So a little bit of context. Hungary is a country of approximately 9.5 million people. So
Mm.
it's a small country, and Christianity has a long history here. Like even from the foundation of the state, which happened 1,000 years ago, Hungary was a Christian nation, heavily Catholic, then really influenced by the Reformation. So if you go to like Joshua Project website and you look up Hungary, it will tell you that it's 87% Christian. Of course, a large portion of that is nominal. and
Right.
then evangelicals just make up 3% of the population.
Hmm.
So so that would give you at least a little bit of a picture. And then also Hungary was under different rules, but part of the communist bloc
Right.
up until 1989. So that means that really had an impact on the spiritual atmosphere or the spiritual environment of this country. And so that's why when people look at the church, I think different associations, but probably none that we would really hope to to have.
Right.
It's like religious hypocrisy, or it's something with tradition, or our culture is really like they speak about this thing called a Christian culture, and like how much is a Christian culture, like how much can a culture really be Christian is an interesting conversation topic. And
Hmm.
so I think how I would summarize it at this point is people don't see a lot of relevance in the Christian message. And I don't think it's just Hungary. I mean, we live in a
Yeah.
globalized culture as well, and especially younger people. Like, I don't think they see relevance in organized religion. Now, Jesus, maybe, but organized
Hmm.
religion, definitely no.
Yeah, I don't think it's just Hungary. I think we just describes a lot of countries that I
Yeah.
know of. And so you talk about, especially the younger generation, don't see a lot of relevance with the church, but as pastor of a church, you want to reach the younger generation. So, what are some things you've done to try and really reach them and make it more relevant to them?
Yeah, so first of all, here, traditional churches, and please hear me, like, I pray for those guys, and I really pray for them, but they have their kind of like givens, like they need to dress a certain way, they need to use music a certain way.
Yeah.
Then it maybe doesn't get across to not even just younger generations. I think just everyday people, like unchurched people,
Hmm.
they can't really connect. So one of the first things that we try to do is um, just to do church in a very informal way. And this might not be something breakthrough or new, but like even just explaining scripture in very simple terms, with language that everyday people can understand. It's not full of theological lingo, and you don't you maybe you haven't gone through Sunday school, and you should still understand the message. So I think a lot of our appeal as the local church, um, was that, so this is a feedback we kept getting, that, oh, I came here and I actually understood what's being said, which is such an interesting
Yeah.
feedback to have. I mean, that's what you would hope everywhere happens in the church. So that's one thing. And then second, um, and probably it's also the reason we are having this conversation, is I saw a big opportunity in using media and online tools and social media to reach out. um, and I actually have observed that our church attendance is like directly related to the size of our YouTube channel. That was one of my early
Wow.
realizations, like a thesis. And then I was watching it over the years, and it's always a 10x. So you look at how big a
Hmm.
YouTube channel is, and it's 10% of that in the room on a Sunday. It's crazy, but it's true in our
Wow.
case. So in that sense, I think that just made it very real that we have a huge lobby online. People who have not walked into the room yet, but they are connecting with the church somehow. And maybe that's an easier on ramp for people than to walk into a building full of people that they don't know at 10 a.m. on Sunday. Like, there's one time
Hmm.
a week you can come, and you have to take a seat. And yeah, online is just a very powerful tool for us. That's what we found.
And especially when you talk about the numbers, that only 10% of the people that are going to hear your message are actually coming to your church in person. So that's, if you, I think the majority of pastors sort of ignore the other 90% and just focus on that 10%, which it's understandable to a point because, they're so busy. And then like, it's a lot of work just to talk to that 10 percent, but there's so many more people out there that you're
Right.
able to reach.
And it's a funny challenge too. Like, how do you not become focused only on people who are not in the room and almost like neglect the ones that are in the room?
Right.
But how do you still reach out to reach those others outside of the room? Yeah, it's a challenge that's ongoing. I think it's always like a balancing act of sorts.
Yeah, for sure. In addition to what you've already talked about, I believe you're also using TikTok
Hmm.
as a way of helping maybe generate some interest for your church or get people to come in and try it out. So can you talk about that?
And the funny thing is that that wasn't even my purpose. Like to bring people to church. Really, my starting point was that church is 2 hours a week, like our service is.
Yeah.
So like, what happens in the other 166 hours? Like, I really hoped I could come alongside people. And yeah, it depends, like, what is your definition of a pastor or the role of a pastor? I think for me, pastoring means helping people walk with God, like develop a friendship with him, enjoy that friendship, improve that friendship, and then just walk with him. Very simple. And I was asking myself the question, is like putting in 10 hours into a sermon prep and delivering it to just maybe 80 people in the room, and then maybe a few thousand people are reached online, is that the best way I can help people walk with God in their daily lives? So, and that's how really the idea came, to start something that would be more of a ongoing, staying close to people, helping them in their everyday challenges. And that's where TikTok came in. TikTok, of course. So this is funny. I considered myself to be young, but when I first saw TikTok, I thought I'm not young anymore. The platform didn't make sense at all. Um, Now, of course, I'm more used to it. So, but I gave myself a challenge to try to do like this 1 minute video just every day for 20 days, and see what happens. So it was very basic, like nothing fancy, no special effects. It's just
Right.
me talking to my phone in my car right after I drop my kids at school, and then just uploading it quickly so that to see how it happens. So yeah, that's how it started.
And what have you seen as the impact from that? Do you have like any stories of someone that it made an impact and they decided to check out the church or they decided to check out Christianity?
Like, the first realization was like, wow, there is a lot of people who would never walk into a church.
Yeah.
Like, I literally had so many chats with random people, and the funny thing about TikTok is you don't even know the name of the person at times, because there are these funky usernames and no videos uploaded. There's a lot of people who just consume content but don't create anything on the platform. So, but they started to message me, and like such good conversations. Like, really, I think I had more conversation in the first 3 months of doing this than over the course of years in the church, because TikTok is really like an outreach platform. So it will reach people who are not connected to you in any way, because of how the algorithm works. Like it pushes up the video to people who don't know anything about you, don't know who you are. And I for really I made a decision not even to put pastor in my bio because I didn't want that to be a hindrance to people. So I was just sharing about God and talking about scripture, often based on the U version verse of the day, that often served as a starting point. And then such great conversations, people saying like, I don't believe in God, but this kind of makes sense, and I have all these questions. And then I had good conversations. Some people were like, oh, actually, I've been away from God for many years now, and then I was able to help them find a church locally and get plugged in. Or there was a person who was like, hey, I want to get baptized, so can you help me? And I'm like, yeah, we are doing baptism in a few years, few weeks. But she's like, I live far away. So I looked up and I actually found a church that's nearby, and they just had a baptism coming up. So like
Wow.
just pointed her in that direction, and she's now baptized. So it's all of those things, really having meaningful conversations with non-believers, with seekers, with skeptics even. And then uh, kind of like the icing on the cake that I was not expecting is that we now have um, three, I think three, like two people and one family who come to the church, and it's because they discovered my videos on TikTok. And I was never intentionally inviting people to church through TikTok or promoting my church. It's really
Hmm.
just them asking in a comment or looking me up, and oh, they found out that there is a church as well. So it's an interesting dynamic, I tell you.
With something like TikTok, you have a unique ability to be able to just get personal with someone and have these conversations, which with, on a Sunday, you can't have those conversations with 80 different people after the church
Right.
service ends, but that's something even on a small church, it's difficult to get that level of
Yeah.
intimacy and of connection. But with something like TikTok, you can do that and people can feel free to ask whatever questions they have. And it
Yeah.
sounds like you get lots of interesting and personal and helpful questions.
And sometimes crazy. Like I tell
Yeah.
you, TikTok's also the place where people don't hold back. Like,
Hmm.
some anonymous person will just post the most harsh things, but I kind of enjoy it. I think it's great. I mean, let's have those conversations.
You are a pastor who is using
Mm.
TikTok, but you don't have to be a pastor to be able to use TikTok to
Oh, sure.
share the gospel and tell people about Jesus. Any Christian who has TikTok or wants to start a TikTok can do that. So, do you have any advice for someone who maybe is a TikTok user and is thinking, well, maybe this is something I can do?
I have, and just to underline your point, that you don't need to be a pastor, I think it's so true. Like when I started on TikTok, I was trying to look up other Christian content creators, and I would say that the top 10 Christian TikTok creators are not even in ministry, like paid ministry or full time ministry or ordained or anything.
Right.
It's just Christians seeing an opportunity and making use of it. So just huge encouragement. I think actually being a pastor might be a, a challenge. You feel like you need to speak on behalf of the church or representing the church. So what my advice would be for someone is to really just be encouraged to start. I think it was eye opening to me when I participated in a training that we had internally in the Lausanne movement. It was called um, social media as a leadership tool, and really this person was the trainer Nachi Lazarus. He was taking us through like social media consumption stats, and like it's constantly growing across platforms across the world. That means people are spending more and more time on social media. And how he put it is that creating content means that we need to think about how we can take the biggest possible slice of that cake of social media consumption for Jesus. So like as Christian content creators, we are not competing against each other, or it's not like which church has a bigger platform or which content creator has a bigger platform. It's like we are all on the same team, and let's just make sure we have tons of content so that people have a chance to see. So my advice would be just to start, um, and also, if I may add, be unshockable. Like
Hmm.
when you go out there, I think sometimes church is a safe place.
Right.
Even like going on short term mission is sometimes a safe thing because you are with your team, and at least always with another person. Social media is raw, like especially TikTok. Like people will find you and will say ugly things in your face. They will ask questions that you don't know the answer for. They will criticize you. They will get personal. They will say stupid things that you don't know how to respond to in a Christ-like way. But that's all okay. I'm pretty sure Jesus had all of that and more when he was walking the earth.
Hmm.
So yeah, just get started.
Yeah, I think Jesus got all of that from his disciples alone, let alone everyone else. Yeah, just
You're right.
so yeah, people are messy, and something like TikTok probably brings out the messiness more than
Hmm.
most other platforms. So just being able to deal with that with grace, and just understanding that, yeah, if someone gets personal, it's about something they're working with, and it's something that God is doing in their heart, and it's not something you should take
Right.
personally.
And you know, I actually enjoy that better. I don't know about you, but sometimes I look at how nice we can sugarcoat things in the world, and
Mhm.
I actually appreciate a real rawness
Yeah.
uh, to get to the core of the matter. Um, and often, when you dig deeper, you personally message a person who said something that wasn't quite right. You try to figure out what's going on in their personal lives. You actually find that there is hurt, that there is a need to minister to them. You might not win them over for Christ in the first conversation, of course, but at least maybe you can, hopefully, God willing, you can give a positive impression. So many people have been hurt by the church. That's what I'm also finding out on TikTok. Like, so many people
Yeah.
pushed back because they had some experience with probably a well-intentioned person who just was human. Yeah, it's an exciting journey.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing your journey with us. And it's exciting to see what God is doing through you, through your church, through YouTube and TikTok, and just everything that you're doing out there. And even though TikTok seems like a crazy platform that you thought you weren't young enough for, it's something that God is still able to use for you. So, everybody, make sure you go. If you're on TikTok, make sure that you find Attila. We will make sure we put his handle on the screen so you can find it. We'll also put it in the description. Um, and thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much for this opportunity. Really enjoyed the conversation.